Sam Carlisle had one rule: stay off his land. But when HOA Queen Karen Madison quietly expanded her backyard onto his farm, she had no idea she'd just declared war on the wrong man. Sam Carlisle had spent his entire life on his 50-acre farm, working the land passed down through generations. He valued his independence, his privacy, and the simple life of a farmer. What he didn't value: nosy suburbanites who thought rules and regulations applied to everyone but themselves. For years, he had peacefully coexisted with the nearby Cedar Hills community, a pristine, HOA-controlled neighborhood filled with residents obsessed with uniformity and property values. But that peace ended the day Karen Madison moved in. Karen wasn't just any HOA member. She was its president, a woman who believed her authority extended beyond Cedar Hills. The moment she settled into her house, right on the edge of Sam's property, she made it clear that his farm was an eyesore. She hated the smell of livestock, the sound of tractors, and the sight of messy fields next to her perfectly landscaped backyard. At first, it was passive-aggressive complaints in the neighborhood Facebook group. Then it was thinly veiled suggestions that Sam should modernize his property. But when he ignored her, she took matters into her own hands. One morning, Sam noticed a section of his land had changed. A stone pathway, flower beds, and even a decorative trellis had appeared on his property. Karen had quietly extended her backyard onto his farmland. Sam marched to her front door, pounding on it with enough force to shake the frame. When she answered, wine glass in hand, she simply smiled. "Oh, Sam, don't be so dramatic," she said sweetly. "It's just a little beautification." Sam's jaw clenched. This wasn't just trespassing. This was war. The next morning, Sam walked out to his fields with the intention of measuring exactly how much land Karen had taken. He wasn't the type to rush into conflict, but the sheer arrogance of her attitude made his blood simmer. He grabbed a survey marker in his land records, then marched toward the intruding garden. To his frustration, it had grown even more overnight. A set of brand new stone lanterns had appeared, along with a decorative water feature. A small, bubbling fountain that looked like it belonged in a high-end spa, not a farm field. As he stood there, hands on his hips, Karen strolled out of her house, dressed in a flowing yoga outfit, holding a smoothie. She acted as if she had no idea why he was standing there. "Sam, what a lovely morning," she chirped, taking a sip of her drink. "Are you out here to enjoy the new view? It's quite serene, isn't it?" Sam's patience was wearing thin. "Karen," he said, voice level but firm, "I told you yesterday, this is my land, and yet somehow you've added more to your little expansion." Karen gasped dramatically. "Oh, come now, Sam, don't be so territorial," she said, laughing lightly. "It's just a little extension. It blends so seamlessly with my yard, you probably didn't even notice it before." Sam stepped forward, pointing to the survey markers he had planted years ago. "See these? These mark the legal boundary of my property. Everything on that side is yours. Everything on this side is mine." Karen took a slow sip of her smoothie, deliberately ignoring his frustration. Then she flashed him a bright, rehearsed smile. "Well," she said, gesturing vaguely toward the land, "I was talking to the HOA board, and we all agreed that this section of land has been underutilized. I mean, Sam, let's be honest. Your farm is a bit of an eyesore compared to our community. We're trying to make Cedar Hills a more welcoming, upscale place. Don't you think a beautifully maintained garden is more valuable than whatever it is you were doing with this dirt?" Sam inhaled sharply through his nose, clenching his fists. "I wasn't doing anything with it because it's my property, Karen." She tilted her head, feigning innocence. "Oh, Sam, don't make this a big deal. It's just a few feet. You're being so stubborn about this. I mean, how much land do you really need? You're just being difficult. Sam stared at her in disbelief. You're serious, aren't you? Karen gave him another fake sweet smile. Of course I'm serious. And I'm not the only one who feels this way. Several members of the HOA believe that if you just worked with us, we could come up with a mutually beneficial solution. Sam let out a short laugh. Mutually beneficial? Like me giving up my land while you turn it into a personal Zen retreat? Karen sighed dramatically. Well, when you put it like that, you make me sound selfish, she said with a little laugh. Look, I understand this is a big change for you, but we're trying to make the community better for everyone. Don't you want to be a good neighbor? Sam had had enough. Karen, this is the last time I'm going to say it. Move your garden back onto your own damn property. For the first time, Karen's smile wavered slightly. Or what? Sam took another step forward, towering over her. Or I'll move it for you. Her expression flickered between annoyance and amusement, as if she wasn't sure whether to be intimidated or dismissive. Sam, she said, voice dripping with condescension, you can't just bulldoze a community improvement project. The HOA would never allow it. Sam narrowed his eyes. The HOA doesn't have a single ounce of authority over my land, and if you don't fix this by the weekend, I'll handle it myself. Karen huffed, flipping her hair over her shoulder. You're being unreasonable, she muttered, turning on her heel and stalking back toward her house. Sam exhaled, shaking his head. She wasn't going to move a damn thing, and that meant he was going to have to fight back. Sam had a feeling Karen wouldn't back down, but he hadn't expected her to go on the offensive so quickly. The very next day, a letter from the Cedar Hills Homeowners Association appeared in his mailbox. He opened it with a sigh, already bracing himself for nonsense. Dear Mr. Carlyle, it began in the overly formal tone of someone who thought their words carried real authority. It has come to our attention that your property does not meet the aesthetic and environmental standards expected by the Cedar Hills community. Multiple residents have expressed concerns regarding the appearance and impact of your farmland on property values. We request that you work with the HOA to bring your land up to community standards. Sam scoffed. He didn't live in Cedar Hills. He wasn't a member of the HOA. This letter had as much legal weight as a grocery store receipt. But Karen wasn't stopping at meaningless paperwork. That afternoon, he saw a group of HOA members gathered near his property line, pointing at his fields and murmuring among themselves. Karen, standing at the center, was gesturing grandly as if she were hosting a TED Talk on land development. Sam didn't have to hear them to guess the conversation. Then came the Facebook posts. Someone sent him screenshots from the Cedar Hills community group where Karen had started a thread titled, How Can We Improve Our Community? Of course, the main topic of discussion was his rundown, unsightly farmland. I know we all appreciate the beauty of our neighborhood. Karen wrote, but it's hard to maintain a sense of elegance when certain areas remain neglected. We all want a clean, safe, and valuable community, and I think we need to discuss what can be done to ensure that every property contributes to the overall aesthetic. One comment stood out. Wait, doesn't that guy own his land outright? What can the HOA even do? Karen's response was pure arrogance. There are always ways to encourage people to do the right thing. It just takes a little persistence. Sam gritted his teeth. Persistence, huh? We'll see about that. The next morning, he found an official complaint from the city's zoning office on his door. Karen had filed multiple reports claiming that his farm violated environmental codes, citing concerns about livestock odor, water usage, and potential drainage issues affecting Cedar Hills. That same day, a city inspector arrived. The man, wearing a clipboard and a weary expression, approached Sam cautiously. "Sir, I have a report about potential code violations. We just need to do a routine check." Sam folded his arms. "Routine? Or did someone with too much free time send you my way?" The inspector sighed. "Look, I know a bogus complaint when I see one, but I have to go through the motions. Mind if I take a look around?" Sam let him. He had nothing to hide. Within 20 minutes, the inspector was shaking his head. "Yeah, this is all nonsense. You're well within regulations. But I wouldn't be surprised if more complaints come through." Sam smirked. "Let me guess. Blonde lady? Self-important HOA president?" The inspector chuckled. "You'd be surprised how often that exact description comes up in my job." By the end of the week, Karen had escalated even further. One morning, Sam woke up to find large "no trespassing" signs staked into the ground, on his land. The HOA had literally planted signs warning against unauthorized access to his property, and then came the final straw. Sam had just finished feeding his cattle when he saw a landscaping crew pulling up near the property line. 3 men in work gear started unloading potted plants, decorative rocks, and fresh sod. They were actively expanding Karen's garden even further. Sam stormed over. "Whoa! Whoa! Whoa! What the hell do you think you're doing?" One of the workers, confused, looked at his clipboard. "We were hired to complete the extension for the Cedar Hills Garden project." Sam let out a sharp laugh. "Cedar Hills Garden project? This is my land." The worker looked back at his crew, then hesitantly at Karen's house. You should probably talk to the person who hired us." Sam turned toward Karen, who was watching smugly from her patio, sipping wine. She waved at him. Sam inhaled deeply, then walked right up to her fence. "Karen, are you actually insane? Or do you just think the law doesn't apply to you?" Karen set down her wine glass with exaggerated patience. "Sam," she said sweetly, "it's called community improvement. The HOA voted on this project, and I think you'll find that the majority of us agree that this land should be put to better use. You're the only one resisting progress." Sam shook his head in disbelief. "You paid people to landscape property you don't own? Do you understand how illegal that is?" Karen waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, don't be such a caveman about this, Sam. We're just making things better. Surely you don't want to be the one person standing in the way of a more harmonious neighborhood." Sam clenched his jaw, his patience snapping. "Karen, this is the last time I'm going to tell you. Get your crap off my land." Karen sighed, as if she were the victim. "Well, if you're going to be difficult about this, I guess we'll have to handle things another way." She smiled, her tone dripping with artificial sympathy. "You know, the HOA has been looking into some alternative solutions for problem properties like yours." Sam's stomach twisted. What the hell did she mean by that? Karen simply winked. "You'll find out soon enough." She turned on her heel and walked back inside, leaving Sam staring after her, a storm brewing inside him. This wasn't just a petty land dispute anymore. This was war. Sam couldn't shake the feeling that Karen was planning something worse than just expanding her precious garden. The way she had smirked at him, the self-satisfied arrogance in her voice when she mentioned alternative solutions. It gnawed at him. He had dealt with pests before, but usually the four-legged kind. Karen was proving to be far more persistent and malicious than any coyote or raccoon. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, he grabbed a flashlight and decided to do a little reconnaissance. He figured if Karen was willing to pay landscapers to invade his land, then she was sloppy enough to leave behind a trail of evidence. He started near the newly installed plants and stone pathway, kicking at the ground where the landscapers had worked. Nothing unusual, just soil and crushed gravel. But as he moved closer to the fence, he noticed something sticking out of her overflowing trash bins. Blueprints. His stomach tightened. Yanking them free, he unrolled the large sheets of paper, his eyes widening as he scanned the detailed sketches and contractor notes. It wasn't just a garden expansion. Karen had planned a full-scale reconfiguration of her backyard. And the worst part? The septic system. Sam's jaw clenched so tightly his teeth hurt. The schematics clearly showed that Karen intended to move her septic tank drain field onto his land, right where she had planted her damn serene Zen garden. She wasn't just encroaching on his property for aesthetics. She was trying to dump her waste, literally, on his soil. His grip on the blueprints tightened, nearly crumpling the paper in rage. That two-faced, manipulative snake. Now it all made sense. The passive-aggressive HOA complaints about his livestock odor, the city inspections, the sudden obsession with beautifying that specific part of his land. She wanted to shift the stink from her backyard onto his farm, all while selling it as a community project. Sam's hands shook with fury, but instead of storming over to Karen's house and shoving the blueprints in her face, he forced himself to think. Number this called for something bigger, something final. If Karen wanted to use his land for her septic tank, she was about to learn exactly what kind of land she was dealing with. An idea formed, a perfectly legal, beautifully destructive idea. He wasn't just going to push back. He was going to plow through every inch of her stolen garden, grind it into dust, and make sure Karen never tried anything like this again. With a slow, dangerous smirk, Sam rolled up the blueprints and headed back to his house. Tomorrow he was bringing out the tractor. The next morning, Sam woke before sunrise, fueling up his biggest, heaviest tractor. The plan had been forming in his mind all night, each detail sharpening into something unstoppable. Karen had played her game, pulling strings, manipulating rules, and lying through her teeth. Now, it was his turn. As the first rays of sunlight stretched over the fields, he climbed into the driver's seat, gripping the wheel tightly. His plan was simple: take back what was his. With a deep, guttural roar, the tractor's engine came to life, echoing across the land. Sam didn't hesitate. He slammed the controls forward and drove straight toward Karen's stolen garden. The first thing to go was the delicate stone pathway. The plow chewed through it like it was nothing, sending chunks of expensive decorative rock flying in all directions. Next, the flower beds. Rows of perfectly arranged tulips and imported roses were ripped from the ground, their roots snapping under the crushing weight of the machine. Then, the ornate wooden pergola, Karen's prized structure, where she had hosted her little wine gatherings. It collapsed like a house of cards, splintering apart as the tractor rolled right through its supports. By the time he reached the fancy outdoor furniture, Sam could see movement in Karen's house. A figure appeared at the window, then another, and then the scream. "What the hell are you doing?" The front door burst open and Karen came barreling down her patio steps, barefoot in a silk robe and curlers half falling out of her hair. A half-empty wine glass was still clutched in her hand as she ran toward the destruction. "Sam! Stop this right now!" she shrieked, her voice cracking with pure rage. Sam didn't stop. His tractor plowed through the last section of the garden, kicking up a cloud of dirt, debris, and shredded landscaping. The once pristine HOA-approved retreat was now nothing but churned-up earth. Karen stumbled to a halt, staring at the devastation with her mouth open in silent horror. You maniac! You destroyed my property! She screeched, practically foaming at the mouth. Sam finally hit the brakes, letting the dust settle as he climbed down from the tractor. He walked toward her slowly, deliberately, pulling something from his pocket. It was her blueprints. He held them up, waving them slightly. You mean my property, Karen? Karen's eyes locked onto the papers, and instantly she knew. The color drained from her face. You... She breathed, her voice now shaking with something far worse than rage, fear. Sam stepped closer, lowering his voice. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? That I wouldn't see your little septic tank plans? Karen staggered backward, her fingers twitching. You're insane. You think anyone's going to believe that? Sam let out a short, sharp laugh. I don't need them to believe it. I just need the city to see it. Karen visibly panicked, her mind racing. You can't do this. I'll call the cops. You're going to jail for this. As if on cue, the sound of sirens echoed from the distance. Sam's grin widened. Go ahead and call them, Karen. Her lips trembled as she turned to see the approaching police car. Her nightmare was just beginning. Karen walked into the courtroom like a queen entering her throne room. She wore an expensive navy blue blazer, her hair styled to perfection, and her face painted with an expression of righteous indignation. She carried herself with the confidence of someone who believed she had already won. After all, she had spent weeks spinning the narrative, telling anyone who would listen that she was the innocent victim of a deranged, violent farmer who had viciously destroyed her property out of spite. Her lawyers, two sharp-dressed, overconfident HOA representatives, flanked her like bodyguards as they strutted toward their table. Across the aisle, Sam sat alone, calm, arms crossed, watching the show unfold with quiet amusement. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, adjusted her glasses and looked at Karen. Mrs. Madison, you may begin. Karen stood up immediately, her expression one of practiced heartbreak. Your Honor, she began, voice dripping with melodramatic sorrow. I never thought I'd find myself in this position. All I ever wanted was to improve our beautiful community, to bring a little elegance and refinement to an area that has long been neglected. But this man, she jabbed a manicured finger at Sam, has harassed, terrorized, and finally destroyed my property in an act of pure malice. Sam raised an eyebrow. Pure malice? This woman deserved an Oscar. Karen continued, now pacing slightly, ensuring the jury could see her distress. I did everything in my power to be a good neighbor, she said, placing a delicate hand on her chest for emphasis. I even tried to work with Mr. Carlyle, suggesting reasonable compromises that would benefit both of us. But instead of a civilized discussion, he retaliated with brutality. She turned back to the judge, eyes glistening with crocodile tears. This man, this brute, unleashed a tractor onto my property, obliterating my hard work, my investments, my dreams. I have suffered severe emotional distress and financial hardship because of his recklessness. She sniffled, dabbing at completely dry eyes with a silk handkerchief. Your Honor, I am seeking full restitution for my damages, as well as punitive measures to prevent further aggression from this barbarian. There was a brief silence in the courtroom. Then the judge turned to Sam. Mr. Carlyle, your response? Sam stood up slowly, unfolding a set of papers with deliberate patience. Your Honor, he said, voice steady, let me start by making something clear. This was never Karen Madison's property to begin with. He walked to the front of the courtroom, setting down a certified copy of his property deed. Every inch of the land she calls hers belongs to me, and I have the legal documents to prove it. Her garden, her furniture, her precious pergola, all of it was illegally placed on my farm. He glanced at Karen, whose smug smile had begun to fade. But that's not all, Sam continued, now pulling out a rolled-up blueprint. See, this wasn't just a case of neighbor trying to pretty up a piece of land. This was a calculated land grab. He unrolled the blueprints, turning them toward the jury and the judge. These are the architectural plans that Karen had drawn up, plans that clearly show her intention to relocate her septic system onto my land. There was an audible gasp from the courtroom. Karen's lawyers immediately jumped to their feet. Objection, Your Honor. This is outrageous. The judge held up a hand, silencing them. Overruled. She leaned forward, studying the blueprints. Mr. Carlyle, continue. Sam walked over, pointing to the exact location of the planned septic tank drain field. This isn't just an aesthetic improvement. This is her attempt to offload her household waste onto my farm. She tried to cover it up with a fancy garden, hoping no one would notice. Karen stood up abruptly, her chair screeching against the floor. Lies! Shrieked. He's fabricating this whole thing. Those are not my blueprints. Sam smirked. Then why do they have your signature on them? Karen's mouth snapped shut. One of her lawyers nervously adjusted his tie. Your Honor, if we could have a recess. The judge ignored him, her focus solely on Karen. Mrs. Madison, she said, her voice cold, did you knowingly attempt to relocate your septic system onto property that did not belong to you? Karen looked trapped, her mind frantically searching for a way out. I didn't. It was a suggestion. Just a suggestion. Sam chuckled, shaking his head. The judge sat back in her chair. Mrs. Madison, not only did you illegally seize property that wasn't yours, but you knowingly submitted false complaints to the city, attempted to manipulate zoning regulations, and now stand before this court lying to my face. Karen was unraveling. No, this is all wrong. He's twisting everything. She turned wildly to her lawyers, but they wouldn't even look at her. Her face twisted with rage and panic. You're all against me. You don't understand what I was trying to do. Her voice grew shrill as she turned back to Sam. You ruined me. You destroyed my home, my reputation, my life. She slammed her hands on the table, shaking with fury. The judge's patience snapped. Enough! Karen froze, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The judge rubbed her temples, clearly exhausted. This court finds in favor of the defendant, Mr. Carlyle. Mrs. Madison, you are hereby ordered to pay $200,000 in damages for trespassing, destruction of property, and fraudulent legal action. Karen let out a strangled noise, somewhere between a gasp and a sob. 200,000? She whispered, her hands trembling. Sam grinned. Hope you've been saving, Karen. Karen collapsed back into her chair, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. And Sam? He walked out of that courtroom a free man, his land reclaimed, and with a victory so sweet, it almost made up for the months of dealing with her bullshit. A few weeks after the trial, Sam was enjoying the peace and quiet that had finally returned to his farm. The sun was shining, the fields were thriving, and most importantly, Karen Madison was nowhere to be seen. Her house had been put up for sale almost immediately after the verdict. She had tried to pretend like she was just moving on to better opportunities, but everyone in Cedar Hills knew the truth. She was humiliated, broke, and fleeing like a rat from a sinking ship. One afternoon, as Sam was fixing a fence near the property line, he saw the inevitable moment he had been waiting for. Karen, standing in her driveway, surrounded by moving trucks, barking orders at the movers, like a stressed-out dictator on the verge of collapse. She looked haggard, her usually perfect hair disheveled, dark circles under her eyes. The sight of her suffering filled Sam with nothing but satisfaction. Then, an idea struck him. A bold, ridiculous, absolutely perfect idea. He walked back to his barn, pulled out a massive wooden sign, and started painting. An hour later, as Karen supervised the last of her belongings being packed away, Sam hauled the enormous sign to the edge of his property, right in full view of her house. With a loud thunk, he drove it into the ground, wiped the sweat off his brow, and stepped back to admire his handiwork. For sale, 1/4 acre of fertilized land, prime location, beautiful garden soil, thanks to HOA President Karen Madison. For a second, there was silence. Then, from across the street, Karen shrieked, "You son of a—" Sam turned around, smiling so wide it hurt his cheeks. Karen was shaking with rage, her face bright red, her fists clenched so tight, her fake nails looked like they might snap off. "You," she sputtered, pointing a trembling finger at the sign. "You cannot be serious!" Sam crossed his arms. "Oh, I'm dead serious. Thought I'd commemorate your little landscaping project properly. You always wanted to make this land useful, right?" Karen let out a feral screech, grabbed a nearby garden gnome, and hurled it straight at the sign. It bounced off harmlessly, landing in the dirt. Sam laughed. One of the movers, a young guy carrying a box, tried and failed to hold back a chuckle. Karen spun toward him with wild eyes, and he quickly looked away, pretending to be very interested in the ground. Sam gave her a mocking wave. "Safe travels, Karen. Hope your next neighbors enjoy progress as much as you do." Karen sputtered with fury, but she was out of power, out of money, and out of time. All she could do was storm into her car, slam the door shut, and peel out of the driveway like a woman possessed. As the dust settled and the moving trucks followed her out of Cedar Hills, Sam let out a satisfied sigh. His land was his again. And Karen Madison? She was nothing more than a bad memory, and a cautionary tale for every other HOA busybody who thought they could mess with the wrong farmer.